All right, so we have to talk about Les Mis, specifically Les Mis Part 1, Book 1. I spent 4 hours reading this book this morning in a coffee shop. Highly recommend. And was filled with profound thoughts in awe of what I was reading. I had no idea Victor Hugo was like that. He is one of the great authors that I have ever read, and yes, I can know this for sure, only having read 100 pages of this book so far. Unless I guess somehow it takes a drastic turn and becomes horrible after page 100. So anyways, this morning I was rereading part 1 and taking notes because I knew the first time reading part 1 that this is introducing some of the most important moral themes of the whole book and just the themes in general. It's introducing things that are going to be important to really internalize and understand before we traverse the next 1,250 pages of the book. So that's why I'm making this video. I just have to talk about the amazing things that I learned and meditated on and realized about this novel. Apart from being recommended to read Les Mis by others, one of the other main reasons I'm reading this book is because I know that Victor Hugo was one of the biggest influences on Dostoevsky, who is my favorite author of all time. And let me tell you, there are so many similarities in here. I can absolutely see how Dostoevsky got so much of the things that he wrote about from this book and from Victor Hugo, and I have a lot to talk about with that too. I also have some disagreements with Victor Hugo that I'd like to talk about. Things that I think he was getting at, that he was getting at with a good heart, but I think actually missed the point of what Scripture says and actually goes against Scripture's teaching in some ways. Before we get into it, this is David Curtis from Reading Underground. Thank you for watching. If you want to learn more about me, you can see the description. If you want to follow me on other things, you can see the description as well. And if you want to support me, feel free to like and subscribe or get in touch with me. Would love to talk to you about any of these things or discuss books. It's one of my dreams to have a book club with the people who follow me and watch my content. So if you're interested in following my story and seeing what I have to say and potentially being in a book club with me at some point, feel free to follow along, subscribe, and keep up with the channel. So what are the major moral themes in Book 1, Part 1 of Les Mis? I actually have 21 written down. We're gonna see if we get to all of those. A lot of them are related to one another, so I'm sure we'll be able to combine some that way. Before we get into these themes, I want to talk a little bit about this chapter in general, and specifically the main character, Charles Bienvenu Muriel. And Bienvenu, I think we can probably say, represents the ethics of Victor Hugo as well. He's sort of this moral example and light for, well, as we'll see with Jean Valjean later on. But I also think that he is strikingly similar to Dostoevsky character Zosima from the Brothers Karamazov. I think we can see Zosima in both Bienvenu and in Jean Valjean. Of course, that's in Book 1, Part 2. We're not going to get into that part today. But Bienvenu is 75 years old. He's the Bishop of Digne. I think that's how you say it. Forgive me. I'm not familiar with French names and pronunciations. And so the things we learn about Bienvenu are going to be the things that define the moral themes that are going to characterize the rest of the book, or so I presume. So Christ-like sacrifice is probably the central ethic of this book and of Bienvenu. It's a central ethic of Christianity in general, is this sort of denying of the self, of picking up your cross, and for the sake of others, for the sake of love for other people. Hugo takes this very, very far with Bienvenu and with his ethic in general, and I think Dostoevsky actually does the same thing. It's this sort of senseless self-sacrifice. It's this sort of almost not even caring about yourself, letting others utterly tread over you and walk on you for their good and for their benefit. Now, we can talk about exactly whether or not that is the wise or biblical course to take. How much should we value our own lives? Because after all, we're made in the image of God too. So just because we are trying to love other people does not mean that we're required to let them hurt us or kill us or take something away from us. And yet this picture of self-sacrificial love, this radical self-sacrificial love that we see from Bienvenu is extremely compelling and emotional, and I think we need to stick with it a little bit longer and really flush it out as we read more of the story. Another theme that we see here is the denial of the physical and pursuit of the spiritual. This is sort of something you see in monks of old and ascetics who sort of see gratifying the flesh as getting in the way of spiritual progress. And this seems to be something that Bienvenu believes himself. The next one is this joy that Bienvenu has, and I would say that his sister Baptistine has as well, this sort of saintly childlike joy that characterizes their disposition and how they talk to other people and how they just live their life just perpetually at peace with God and with the world. His conversation was affable and cheerful. He was sociable with the two old women who spent their lives with him. When he laughed, it was the laugh of a schoolboy. This makes me think about the verse in the scriptures that says, if you do not become like a child, you cannot enter in the kingdom of heaven. There's many implications of that, but I think here we can see that it does mean a total childlike peace, not based on ignorance, but based on fully trusting that God is in control and that he is good. Of course, concern for the poor is a major theme here for Bienvenu, and the oppressed versus the oppressor sort of in general is a big theme here. One of the only luxuries that the bishop allows is this sort of immaculate cleanliness of a certain room in the house, and he says, well, it takes nothing away from the poor, so why not? This denial of the physical and the pursuit of the spiritual is also corresponding with this other theme of sort of viewing true danger in life as not being something that threatens your physical health, but that threatens your spiritual health. Bienvenu views true danger as being from the flesh, as being from the world, as it can tempt you and lure you into spiritual turmoil. Man exists in the flesh, which is at once his burden and his temptation. He drags it around with him and gives into it. He must be vigilant, keep it in check, repress it, and yield to it only in the last extremity. Yielding to it may still be wrong, but in that case the wrongdoing is venial. In so falling, he falls on his knees, and it may end in prayer. And on page 28 through 29, it says, never fear robbers or murderers. Those are dangerous that come from without. Small dangers. Let us fear ourselves. Prejudices are the real robbers. Vices are the real murderers. The great dangers are within us. Never mind what endangers our life or our purse. Let's be mindful only of what endangers our soul. Then turning to his sister, Sister, no priest should ever guard himself against his fellow man. Whatever his fellow man does, God allows it. Let us simply pray to God when we believe some danger threatens us, and pray not for ourselves, but that our brother may not fall into sin on our account. So again, it's this sort of radical sort of dismissing of the physical in pursuit of the spiritual. Another theme we see here introduced is this sort of radical grace towards sinners and people who maybe don't deserve it, or just general concern or pity for those who are suffering. As we have this exclamation from Bienvenu on page 15, my brethren, have pity, see the suffering around you. It says later on that he cared for anything that suffered, anything in the world that suffers, he cares for. And I think the reason he cares so much is because he sees himself as guilty, he sees himself as a sinner and as a wretch. And sin being the cause of all suffering in this world, he kind of sees, maybe he sees himself as responsible in some way, similar to how Dostoevsky describes Zosima discussing, being guilty before all mankind, and the brother of Zosima discussing, how he apologized to the birds for his sin. The next theme that we can talk about here is the responsibility of the degradation of society and maybe crime on the failing of those with power and leadership, which can possibly convey a sort of lack of moral accountability for the poor because they've been oppressed into committing these crimes. He says, the failings of women, children, and servants, of the feeble, the destitute, and the ignorant, are the fault of their husbands, fathers, and masters, of the strong, the rich, and the learned. There's something to this idea that those who are supposed to lead, those who are supposed to protect, those who are supposed to provide, if they neglect to do those duties for the vulnerable among us, then when the vulnerable among us fall into degradation or even moral failings or poverty or suffering or death or tragedy or whatever it is, then in a sense that blame is to be laid on those who were supposed to be there to care for them. The men of the society, the leaders, the ones with money, the ones with power, the ones with the ability to protect and provide, but they didn't do that, and instead they hoarded those things for themselves or used them in some unjust way. Another theme is skepticism on the government to condemn people for their sin. There's this story recounted of these two people who commit a crime, a woman and a man. The woman gets caught, but the man is basically scot-free unless the woman rats him out. The prosecutor uses jealousy to sort of manipulate the woman into giving him up so that he gets arrested too. They both get sentenced to death. And it says, when the discussion came to a close, he asked, where are this man and woman to face judgment? At the court of Assizes. And he went on, and where will the crown prosecutor face judgment? What right do they have to enforce justice as people who are unjust themselves? And this is a theme we definitely see in Dostoevsky as well. It's something we can talk about later. Another theme is the opposition to the death penalty. We can see on page 18, and it says, as for the bishop, it was a shock to him to have seen the guillotine, and it took him a long time to get over it. We can think of Dostoevsky going to almost be publicly executed himself, and the impact that had on him and how he opposed the death penalty as well. Another great theme is the theme of suffering and grief being redeemed by hope, being contextualized maybe by hope. This quote is so amazing. It says on page 22, the most beautiful of altars, he said, is the soul of one comforted in their distress who thanks God. This is what faith looks like. It's when suffering is overwhelming you. It's when tragedy is at your door. It's when you don't understand what's going on around you. It's where you're confused. And how do you respond? Well, you respond by seeking Christ, by looking to God for comfort. And when you believe in his promises for you despite these sufferings, that's what's being described here. That's the most beautiful thing to God, is when in the midst of darkness, you choose to believe in him and trust him and be at peace, even though, darkness surrounds you. So another theme that we see here is mercy as the highest moral good. On page 21, he says, Ecclesiastes names you Almighty. The Maccabees name you Creator. The Epistle to the Ephesians names you Freedom. Baruch names you Immensity. The Psalms name you Wisdom and Truth. John names you Light. The Book of Kings names you Lord. Exodus names you Providence. Leviticus, Sanctity. Esdras, Justice. Creation names you God. Mankind names you Father. But Solomon names you Mercy. And of all your names, this is the most beautiful. So Bienvenu clearly values mercy above all other virtues. Another theme that we see here is obedience to God in the midst of suffering. Specifically for people who are doing ministry or trying to help others, that they're expected to be obedient even when it's extremely difficult. For he basically shared the general impression, and the member of the convention inspired in him, without his being clearly conscious of it, that feeling bordering, as it were, on hatred, and so well expressed by the word aversion. Still, should his sheep's scab cause the shepherd to recoil? No, but what a sheep. So the difficult for Bienvenu to actually minister to this member of the convention is expressed as a scab on the sheep. But no matter how disgusting the scab is, the sheep still needs tending to. The next thing we're going to talk about is goodness and moral action as being necessarily grounded in a love for Christ. He says, progress must believe in God. Good cannot be served by the ungodly. The atheist is a bad guide for the human race. So you have all these intellectuals at this time in France and Russia, all over Europe, trying to advocate for progress and making all these decisions for radical change or progress in society. But here you have Victor Hugo saying, okay, but you can't do that unless you're a Christian. You can't do that unless your beliefs are based on love of God, because God is love. And so trying to act out love while rejecting the existence of love itself is not going to go well for you. The last theme I'm going to mention here is this sort of hesitancy from Bienvenu to study the deep things of God, the deep complex things of God, and instead resigning oneself to a simple faith, leaving that to the great minds, and simply focusing on the gospel and moving through life, trusting God fully in all things that are mysterious to the human mind. This is a little bit of a longer quote, but it is absolutely stunning. It is one of my favorite quotes that I've read so far. Someone says, Bienvenu, your love one another is an absurdity. Well, replied Monsignor Bienvenu without arguing, if it is an absurdity, the soul ought to wrap itself up inside it like the pearl in the oyster. So did he wrap himself up in it and lived his life there, absolutely content to do so. Leaving aside the stupendous questions that lure and appall, the limitless perspectives of abstraction, the precipices of metaphysics, all those profundities converging, for the apostle in God, for the atheist in nothingness, destiny, good and evil, the warring of human beings against each other, man's consciousness, the pensive somnambulism of animals, transformation by death, the compendium of existences contained in the tomb, the incomprehensible grafting of successive loves on the enduring self, essence, substance, being and non-being, the soul, nature, freedom, necessity, unscalable problems, dangerous obscurities on which the gigantic archangels of the human mind turn their attention, dreadful abysses that Lucretius, Manu, St. Paul, and Dante contemplate with that blazing eye, gazing intently on the infinite, and there seeming to bring stars into being. Bienvenu was simply a man who noted the mysterious questions from the outside, but without studying them, without debating them, and without troubling his own mind over them, and who had in his soul a serious respect for the unknown. So those are some of the moral themes that we see in chapter 1 that I think are going to go on to define a lot of what happens in the rest of the novel. But there's also presented some anti-themes or some belief systems that are to be refuted in this book. Some of those are atheism, the world as substance, and paradise as shadow, whereas Hugo would see it as the world as shadow and paradise as substance. As in other words, the physical being the most important and the spiritual or the eternal being secondary. That's a view to be rejected, according to Hugo. Another one is religion is only for the wretched or for the poor so that they can basically cope with the suffering that they are experiencing. Another one is that man should be governed only by science, which is a quote from page 38. Materialism in general, idolizing the French Revolution, and utilitarianism are some of the anti-themes that I saw in book 1, part 1. Some other general themes that we see here are going to be contrasting the earth with the sky, this sort of world between earth and sky. I noticed this in part 1, but it was confirmed for me when I read a little bit into part 2, so I'll share a little bit of a quote from that. Peculiarly. So the earth was lighter than the sky, which is a peculiarly sinister... Peculiarly is the hardest word I've ever had to pronounce. Peculiarly. Goodness gracious. Sinister effect, and the hill, squat and dwarfish in shape, appeared indistinct and pallid against the gloomy horizon. So sort of contrasting the earth and the sky, saying that the earth seemed lighter than the sky. Whereas in Hugo, the rightly ordered way is that the sky is lit up by stars and the earth is dim. Another quote is from page 54. Was not this small enclosure with the heavens for a ceiling enough for him to be able to worship God in his most delightful works, and his most sublime works, each in turn? Was not all here, in fact? What more could anyone wish for? A little garden in which to stroll, and boundless space for dreaming. At his feet, what a man may grow and pick, and above his head, what he may study and meditate on. A few flowers in the ground, and all the stars in the firmament. And stars in general is another theme. Just the theme of light and darkness is, it is absolutely ubiquitous in this story. I almost feel like he could, do a little bit less. It's like every page there's something about light being representing moral clarity, the presence of God, harmony, the right ordering of things, and darkness being confusion and oppression and demonic and fleshly. These sorts of ancient themes of light and dark are presenting themselves here. And then the last theme is this sort of contrasting of mind and thinking versus impulse. The mind and thinking being more divine and impulse being more animalistic. Bienvenu says that the mind for him is like a garden, and he meditates many hours on the things of God, and this is to be contrasted with simply acting, simply doing. So for the sake of time, I'm actually going to end it here, and we're going to do other videos talking about what I agree with and disagree with Victor Hugo. What do I think is actually not biblical that he expresses in these themes, And then also, what do I agree with? What do I think he says that's especially beautiful and true, which there's plenty of here, make no mistake about it. Even though I have some disagreements with him, plenty of the things that he says brought me to tears in this book in part. Another thing I'll be talking about is Dostoevsky's influence from Hugo, and all the many, many ways that I see Dostoevsky's characters even here in Les Mis. Just a few of them to preview is his opposition to the death penalty, his skepticism of the government's ability to condemn, viewing self as guilty before all, radical humility and submission to others, even if doing so harms you, concern with the wretched. I'm not sure if this moral accountability or the lack of moral accountability for poor people is the same as we see in Dostoevsky, or where it's a little bit different. Grief and suffering being dignified through hope. Beautiful as being just as useful as the useful, or perhaps even more so, as Bienvenu says, is this sort of moral quality in beauty itself. Needlessly giving yourself over to danger out of complete sacrifice and trust to God. Both of them vehemently opposed materialism and utilitarianism, and both of them saw progress in moral action as being grounded in faith. All of these themes are heavily represented in Dostoevsky, and I did not realize how heavily they're also represented in Hugo. So we're going to be talking about that later too. But that's all I'm going to have for you today. So thank you for watching, and stick around if you want to see more Les Mis and Dostoevsky content.